Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays, brought to you by David Gokhshtein and the Gokhshtein News Network. I'm your host, Landy, and today is January 26th, 2026. And we're looking at Bitcoin on the weekly, and I actually have the areas of interest pulled up for the weekly and some of the dailies, as well as the point of control and, that macro fib that I typically show in these videos. And the main reason why is because we've had a significant development for price action on Bitcoin, and that is a lower high. And now we can actually define some pretty clear criteria for continuation to the downside and what that might mean if we do start to see it. And then, of course, a trend reversal and or trend break back to the upside. So right off the bat, we now have a lower high, not just swing, at just shy of $98,000, essentially our $98,000 area getting hit with a front run of this weekly overhead resistance through that point of control where the daily did stop and take a break at for a moment before heading up to that $98,000 region. But now we have a confirmed high on a closing basis. So that confirmed high on a closing basis is now 93,633.53. And what did we see over the weekend? Well, we saw price action dive all the way down on the daily, of course, down through that $89,000 region. And then, of course, we saw $86,000 get tested, essentially right on $86,000, $86,000.13. So Bitcoin still trapped in this big weekly zone. Now, remember, we saw Bitcoin head down on the daily and touch the weekly below at just above $80,000, coming in at $80,500 or so. And then, of course, it closed above $86,000. We saw Bitcoin, bounce around and create some daily structure below $86,000, but no weekly closes. We have then seen Bitcoin head up and test towards the overhead weekly resistance. So we had weekly support get hit. We've had overhead weekly resistance essentially get hit. And then Bitcoin has closed again back in between this wider range. You can just kind of call $93,500 to $86,000. So what do we look for next? Well, on the weekly, if we do see $86,000 dropped, of course, we'll see that on the dailies before the weekly close or headed into a weekly close if it does happen, as Bitcoin is rejecting the common weekly swing, higher low and lower high over here at, the upper $88,000 to $89,000 region, around $88,700 to $8,000 to $89,000. And playing in the week half of this weekly closing structure between that 86 and 93.5. Now, if this is dropped, obviously on the daily, we'd be looking, 86 to around that 83.5 or so for the daily. Anywhere below there, we're looking for the weekly to, head down to 80,000 to 78, possibly even going more. To the next area, which is a swing inside of these weekly closes, right? Between 80 and 78, we have a swing just below there at 76,555. And then, of course, we have the monthly higher low, which is the weekly lower low over here at that 74,420.69 even here on spot price for Coinbase. Now, you might note that back here, this structure, we had the big sell-off from an all-time high, right? We had an all-time high, in this case, an all-time high that resulted in a lower high close, right? This was the warning signal here. And what ended up happening was the big sell-off after losing $89,000 on the low. We did see the big liquidation event with the close back above 93.5, which was the closing higher low over here. And then knifed straight down through it, set a lower low, into a lower high at 89, and then a lower low close with a lower low swing, but it closed just inside of this swing low right here at $78,000 or so. Then Bitcoin broke the lower high and, of course, went on to make a new higher high, and then a higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, and then, of course, the last higher low that it lost and did retest on the weekly, to be fair, did get broken, of course. Now we're in lower low, lower high territory yet again. So what is the criteria here? There's a few different ways of looking at this, and right now, oops, sorry, just dropping stuff, as I do typically. Right now, there's a couple of scenarios, as I mentioned last week on Friday, that could play out, right? You got the lower low, lower high, and then there's the potential for a higher low, right, that comes in somewhere in here. This is just an example that closes above the 80,500, and then a lower low, rather, not a higher low. So a lower low swing that closes inside of this wick low at 80,524.65. That could try to set up for a trend reversal and try to take out $98,000. So you have a scenario like that could play out for sure. And let's just do that again, actually, seeing as I goofed it up. So, you get a swing of the lows or a sweep of the lows. It doesn't have to look like this and come anywhere in this area. And then try, as long as it was to close back above this swing low, take out the lower high, and you have a broken downtrend, right? This is where we wouldn't get trend continuation, at least not right away. And then you would subsequently look for higher low, equal low structure from there. This could also create a higher low, right? Maybe it comes in something like this, right? And then that would be your trend reversal setup to a trend break, right? And that's a little bit more powerful in many cases, but not, it's not a signal in and of itself. I know a lot of traders like to look for the sweep of the lows, close above, and then a trend break, and then catch a higher low from there. So for instance, like it trend breaks and then, does a higher low or something like that, right? That's what many like to catch. It's a favorite of mine as well, but be aware that if this is going to result in a bullish fashion, you can accept higher lows on a swing basis that close below this closing low. So lower low close with a higher low swing. It's fair game. That would be a trend reversal setup with a higher low swing, even though the close comes in lower. If it were to break the downtrend, that'd be the other bullish scenario to kind of look out for or pay attention to, whether it was right here, right now, right at 86, or whether it was lower, or whether it sweeps the low. Doesn't really matter. If it is a higher low swing, you get that trend reversal setup. If it were to be a lower low swing with a lower low close, that's not necessarily a trend reversal setup. That is, if it were to go break the downtrend, then it breaks the downtrend, and then you look for a higher low trend reversal setup later. Either way, you're looking for higher lows after it breaks the downtrend. It just depends on how you play it, if you're more aggressively or not, and if you think it's going to play out in the bullish fashion. The other scenario is, of course, that this just heads down. It gets continuation down, right? That would be your bearish setup. And this right here, this weekly close, is a trend reversal setup. Continuation would confirm on closes below the 80,500 area, right? But again, one of the big things that you got to understand about what's going on here on the weekly, and I do think it's important to understand, while it still could get continuation, we've got the lows over here, major lows on the weekly, that are front running a major zone of accumulation over here. And even going back to what we saw over here, this is actually one of the scenarios that I just pointed out, right? We had a downtrend in the structure here where, of course, we had the higher high, we had a higher low, we had a lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, higher low, but lower low close, right? And then we got the trend break right here. And then we got the higher low. So this was the trend reversal setup when this confirmed right here, right? So what was the criteria here to play out bullishly? Well, we had the lower high, lower low close, but a higher low swing once we got the close here in mid-September of 24. Went in, painted a higher high to higher low close, and then up and away, right? So this is where, that is one scenario that could play out. And it's one of a few, right? And then, of course, over here, we have another example of a reversal setup where we had a lower low, lower high, lower low close and swing, but remained inside of the swing structure here and here. So realistically, it could have closed below the 78, but it didn't even close below the 78 or the 76,555. That was the criteria. It was closing above there. It took out the lower high up here, so we were in higher high territory, went all the way up here, and then put in the higher low trend reversal setup, then went on to make new all-time highs. So that would be your bullish scenario. Otherwise, we're looking at trend continuation to the downside, right? Close below. But beware, because, if you are bearish here, beware that there is support here, and then it would be a retest of prior resistances. So, and these prior resistances were technically flipped into support on this low over here, although it wasn't directly tested, or, the structure in there wasn't directly tested, which we'd be looking somewhere around, $68,000 to 70 essentially. Or that 73,835 over there is the high. So just be aware of kind of the scenario. This is a significant high that was just put in, because now we have very clear criteria in front of us. Now, the big thing to be aware of is when pairing this up with bands, that, the lower second is also right down here at $75,000 essentially, right by the monthly higher low. Now, I will say, when looking at the monthly, if we get a broken structure on the monthly, that would be the break of the uptrend. That'd be on closes anywhere below the 74,420.69 there. So that would be significant as well. If we did see that, that would look like broken structure. Probably sellers rallies from there, much like what we've seen in the prior weeks here. On moving up to 98. So also note that even if it sticks around and trends its way back up, the band setup is not favorable, because the bands are really wide as it relates to support and resistance here. And on the way back up, you've got 98 to 101 where the basis is, right at the top side, where I do think shorts wouldn't just be covering. Most people have an invalidation of bearish thesis above like 107, 108. But I'm looking at 112, even possibly 116. If you look at the band setup, 112 is right there at the upper first. Upper third is up here all the way by the highs at $123,000. You could even get higher highs, right? They go up to like 135 that turn out bearish as a result, because the type of band setup we would need to see is a trend up and then a compression to re-expansion for an actual leg, if it was even to turn bullish from here. So just be aware of the scenarios. It's painting a bearish scenario right now with a trend reversal setup. So lower low, lower high typically does mean trend reversal, but understand that we're coming into support. Bands are set wide, and it could very easily result in robust buybacks if it does dip lower. And then also watch the local area, 86 to 89. If we start seeing daily closes above 89, look to that 93.5, 94, and then 94 to 96, 96 to 98, 98 to 101, so on and so forth. So we'll cover this a little bit more as price develops over this week. Understand that there is a few things going on this week. We have the FOMC meeting. That's the big one to be aware of. That's on Wednesday. So I believe there's no rate cut expected. So if there is a rate cut, I think that would, jar the markets, at least in terms of lower term time frame volatility. But outside of that, probably not do too much else. So that's really it for the daily here. Daily could bounce from here. Really low, read on stochastic momentum, but it can stay down here for an extended period of time. So if it loses 86, understand we're going to be looking, 86 to 83 and a half initially, and then anywhere below there that, anywhere between that 83 and a half and 80, and then 78 to 80, so on and so forth down there to the mid 70s. And to the upside, above, you can even see just above 93 and a half, that upper first just kind of skating sideways around 94 and a half. So 94 to 96 is kind of the area to pay attention to the upside. And then right around the highs above 96 to 98, we have the upper second kind of splitting the difference there. And even if it were to start pushing up, it would need to get that expansion up into and above that 101 to start testing like 102 and a half, 103 and a half, so on and so forth. And there's so much overhead resistance, like every $2,000 overhead. And I would argue, arguably every $2,000 to the downside as well. But yeah, that's Bitcoin in a nutshell there. So we do have some significant structure in place now to reference. So I think that's actually a good thing. As it was just kind of unknown if we were going to get just, consolidation, then continuation, or if we were going to put in a lower high locally or push further up, so on and so forth. Now we have that lower high in on the weekly. So it gives us very clear cut criteria on a closing basis. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at commodities. We did hit, we did not quite hit the fib, but we did hit 5,100. So to the upside here, above 5,100, we've got a major fib at 2,618. In around 5130, 5150. Anywhere above there, we're very quickly looking at 52 to 53. You can see the upper third extending out towards 53, almost 5320 here. That will continue to go up. Even if Bitcoin corrects back towards the basis, the bands will continue to sweep up there. So definitely keep an eye there. On any close above 5,100, we're probably pretty quickly looking at 52 to 53. And now from a volatility standpoint, 53 is also the upper third on the weekly here. And again, in this case, the criteria is basically between 45 and 4,600. It's got to hold on any kind of pullbacks. Silver on the weekly here, screaming. This is actually not relevant here. I did talk a little bit about kind of what I was thinking in terms of my silver trade on some spaces. I opened it at 95.50. I announced when I opened it. I said I would continue to build that to 105 with a stop at 115. But this morning at around 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, I was watching price just rise really aggressively on lower term time frames. And I was like, you know what? I think this is probably going to continue and it'll probably take my stop. Would it be worth repositioning or building out that trade even further? And I decided to build that trade out even further. And I pulled my entry from just shy of 102 up to 107.71. It dumped out. I then took a bunch of profit so that I can continue to build the trade out further up. I think it's getting fairly close on the daily. Now that's just managing risk. I'm not looking for like a macro top right now on silver. Silver can continue to rip. I'm more playing a daily correction from here and positioning for one. And it exceeded the criteria that I was looking for. It got really hot in lower term timeframes and just was not giving up, right? As it was coming into, this was a very nice uptrending structure. And it was as it came down into the market open for the US, I was like, you know what? It's going to start ripping. And that's what it did. And as it began to continue to go up and start to pass 110 into 112, I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to reposition this position further up for a little bit. So let's go ahead and remove the stop. Let's throw on a little bit of risk and average that position up, and then see if we can't catch a downside move, and really just take the profits in order to have a position further up. And I'll continue to do that and manage that trade in that fashion. I'm not trying to pick a top. I'm not even calling for a number for the top, but it is very extended. It can stay extended. Ugly candle on the daily, I can tell you that much. 120 is in the cards for silver if it does maintain above right around $98 now on closes for the daily. And, if it does drop it, we're probably looking at a move back to 88 to 90, somewhere around the basis band, maybe even towards that basis band if it were to just race right there. But probably 88 to 90 if it does drop right around $98. So natural gas is another one that I've been talking about on Spaces. Really haven't been showing it here. I was calling for a low to kind of come in somewhere around this 382 from some longer term time frame stuff, and it absolutely raced, obviously, with the Arctic blast. I think at first it was like a snap, and now it's a blast, and yeah, so a lot of stress on natural gas futures, and played the fibs perfectly, 0.5, 618, right up to the 718, or 786 rather. Could it continue? Sure. This is, downside correction to a nice big break back to the upside. I would say as long as it's above 488 right now, it's looking pretty good to keep plumbing the highs. If it puts in a higher low around that 618, right around 480 to 490. It could even mean revert all the way back to the base. As long as it's trading above like that $3, $3.10 region, it's fine. I'd look for it to try and build out some structure. It's getting up there, but it's nothing too crazy. It is getting a little overheated on volatility, but it can continue. It's got the momentum to do it. The weekly is also looking like expansion, especially anywhere above this 786. That's aggressive expansion up towards 8, maybe even up towards $10. Could it get there? Sure, absolutely. There's nothing saying that it can't, especially after the downtrend break with the Arctic snap and then the higher low that was put in on the weekly here, and then right back up. That's a nice trend. When looking at the monthly, it would have to close this month like this, but this would be expansion up towards that $10 region. Again, it's going to hold around 380, 390 on the daily on corrections from here. Can it dip lower? Yes, but that structure could potentially break. And now again, this is all very much going to be dependent on what's happening here in the United States for natural gas futures. So regarding the weather in this case, let's go ahead and take a look at traditional markets. Dow. Hey, look, monthly, obviously new all-time high. Weekly, looking strong still above that upper first. I've mentioned this quite a bit. As long as it's above 48,430 or 48.5, essentially, it's looking fine to keep continuing up. And if it trades above last week's high at 49.06, we're probably looking for a run towards 50K. Daily now did get a higher low, so we could be looking at a setup where we got a higher low in lower term time frames above 49.6, look to 49.9, and then 50 thereafter, and probably a bit more up to like 50,250, 50,300 if it gets expansion price replace band. And that's going to be contingent on holding 48,950 now. If we do see that dropped, we're likely looking mid 48s again. Looking at NASDAQ, this is a lower low trying to work its way back to the highs. I've mentioned this before, above 25.9. We're looking 26,000 pretty quickly, and then likely up to 26.1 to 2 for the highs. And then, from there, I'm looking around 26.5 initially, 26.4 to 5 initially. And that's going to be contingent on holding this lower low, and then of course breaking the highs up here, this higher high swing at 25,873 in this case, but it needs to hold right around 25,000. SPY, same deal as NASDAQ. Can it gun for the highs? Now these are all-time highs at 696. Above there looking essentially 698 to 700 with the potential for more on expansion, 702 to 705 being up next. And in this case, I'd need to see it closing above around 685, 686 here. Otherwise, it's likely going to drop down to 680 and go for this lower low at 676, 675. So 696 is the high, or just over 696, 696.09. Above there, it's kind of 698 to 700. And then I'd be looking 702 to 705 from there. Contingent on holding right around 685, 686. Anywhere below there, 680, and then 675 or so. Pretty simple setups here. Nothing too crazy. I know everybody's been asking about copper. Copper's been a big narrative as like the next mover. One of the things I do want to note here is we have two swings at around 572, 573. It needs to hold this. If it doesn't, well, it's pretty quickly likely going to go test the next area below there at 560 to the lower second at around 570. And of course, it would be a lower high if it did so from here, directly from here. If it and this uptrending structure is broken now, so beware of a trend reversal setup on copper below 592, and then if it were to drop that 573 or so, then we're looking for that downside move to begin. If it can trade above yesterday's high around 607, look for that 620 possible expansion up to 625 and beyond towards that 640 to 650 area. And from the weekly standpoint, this has been going up, just kind of grinding sideways and up after some pretty volatile moves, right? Big move up and then straight back down to the lower first, lower second zone, and then right back up to the highs. We have not seen a close above 598, $6, but it's trading or trying to trade right around there. Did get an open just slightly above it, but we need to see some closes above it to actually start testing further up towards 650, which would put it above the upper second and likely looking for more later. I could go out to longer term time frames, but I don't think it's really that relevant right now. For this is CFDs, and so you're not going to get quite as much history, but it would look like on the monthly it would want to go for a leg further up. And from the monthly standpoint, as long as it's above 440, what is it? No, it's going to be right around 440, 437. As long as it's above there, it's actually fine to keep chopping around, moving up. That's going to do it for today. Look, Bitcoin, with the lower high on the weekly, just understand that that is the trend reversal setup. The confirmation would be closes below 80,500 for continuation into the low side structure here from the monthly and weeklies, and potentially into the highs here. But even if it does dip in there, be aware of any kind of weekly closes back above. And if it sticks right in the $86,000 region, understand that it could very much try for the top side and for a trend break from here as well, if it were to do that. Otherwise, the other option is continuation. And that's all I got for you today. I'll catch up with you again on Wednesday, of course, for the Wednesday check-in. Please like and share this video out there if you did find it informative or helpful in any way. It does help me a lot, and I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate all the comments and suggestions and discourse that's going on, in spaces and in the comments of those spaces when you all are there as well. So much appreciated, much love. I hope you all have a wonderful week and a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. Take care.